Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sacha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sacha Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Guru Abhishta Shapurakam Guru Ganera Shisha Sambhushitam Chinta Chinta Samasta Vedanipunam Shri Rupa Panthanugam Govindabhidam Ujjalam Vartanum Bhaktianvitam Sundaram Mande Vishwagurun Cha Divya Bhagavat Premdo Hibij Pradam Devam Divyatanum Suchandravadanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandranandapuram Sadekavarnam Vairagya Vidyambudim Shri Siddhantanidhim Subhaktilasitam Saraswatanam Maram Bandetam Shabdam Madekasharanam Nasiswaram Śrīdharam Shri Siddhanta Saraswati Tividito Gaudiya Gurvanvaye Bhata Bhanuriva Prabhat Kagne Ugaura Sankirtane Mayavada Timingilo Dragatan Udhritya Jivaniman Krishna Prema Sudabdigahan Sukham Pradat Prabhum Tam Bhaje Namo Gaura Kishoraya Bhaktavadhuta Murtaye Gaurang Ripadma Bhrangaya Radha Bhav Nishevine Bande Bhakti Vinodam Shri Gaura Shakti Sarupakam Bhakti Shastragya Samrajam Radha Rasa Sudhanidhim Gaura Vrajashita Sheshaira Vaishnavaira Vanda Vigraham Jagannatha Prabhum Vande Premabdhim Mudda Vaishnavam Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Namo Mahavadannaye Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratushe Namah. So, we are on chapter of pure devotion, which is chapter 10, and we're on page number 131, if that helps. So I will read the last paragraph, just reread it so that we get cued into the flow. This is Param Guru Mahārāj. What is in connection with Krishna is all good. It is nirgun, transcendental, without material qualities. In this world, truth is a relative thing. This is true, this is not true, this is mine, this is yours. What value do these things have? If a devotee steals a flower for Krishna, you may say, "Oh, why are you stealing my flower?" But what is the guarantee that the flower belongs to you? These are different stages of bogus conceptions of reality. A man who has possession of some land declares himself the owner. Then a big landowner comes and says, "You are not the owner. I have real possession of this land. I have allowed you only to use it." But beyond the landowner, a king may come and say, "Oh no, this is my land. Your ownership is only relative. I am the ruler of this land. It belongs to me." In this way, one relative conception of truth fights with another, and morality stands only on this conception: this is mine, this is yours. All these conceptions of ownership are false. All these transactions of morality are false, because they are not in connection with the Supreme Truth. So the devotee's apparent misbehavior is quite the contrary in reality. Dvaite bhadra bhadra jnana saba manodharma ei bhala ei manda ei saba brahma. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita Antalila. In the material world, conceptions of good and bad or right and wrong are all mental concoctions. Therefore, saying this is good and this is bad is all a mistake. So, in the deepest plane of reality, the deepest wave of Krishna consciousness is moving, and there so many Jiva souls are dancing. And that dance is the absolute dance wherein everything surrenders to Krishna in the mood of Vrindavan. Sarva dharmana pratyajya mamaikam. Everything belongs to Krishna, and for his satisfaction, anything and everything can be done. This is the only principle followed by the exclusive devotees without caring for the many relative demands and strictures of this false plane. That is nirgun, transcendental. In that plane, the calculation of false ownership can't be applied. All claims of ownership have no value in Krishna consciousness. There is another point that may also be considered in this verse. Once Parashar Muni was crossing a river. A young lady was piloting the boat. As the boat reached the middle of the river, Parashar suddenly became charmed by that young lady. He proposed that they unite, and they did. As a result of their union, Ved Vyas was born. Parashar was already a man of higher sense control, but the time had come for the birth of Vyas, and this created a necessity at a particular stage in him. Suddenly he was overwhelmed by lust and united with that lady. From their union came Vyasadeva, the compiler of all the Vedic scriptures. So this was the determination of the universal will. Parashar is not to be accused or condemned. He is not a party to that. He is an instrument of the universal will. We should not consider this an event of lustfulness and criticize Parashar for his immoral action. He was inspired by some inner will and overpowered by the divine force of the nirguna will of Krishna. Only then did these things take place. Therefore, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that it is not the action but the background of the action that is to be considered. That is to be examined, not the action alone. The motive underlying the action, not the karma, but the purpose. That is the culprit. Draupadi had 5 husbands, but not of her own accord. She had to accept the trouble as her duty. She did not do so for the sake of pleasure. So Draupadi should not be held responsible for this. It cannot be said that she is unchaste. She cannot be held responsible for having many husbands. It is said in the Shastra that Draupadi or Kunti may seem to be unchaste, but if you chant their names, you will be purified. So the internal meaning of an act, its purpose, should be considered, not the external action. The higher principle is served not by following ordinary law, but by following some higher law. In that case, the ordinary law is surpassed. One might think a devotee a culprit from the consideration of ordinary law, but from the consideration of a higher law, Krishna has said that if you can appreciate their law breaking, you will be uplifted. Agyaiva gunana doshan maya dishtana api swakan dharmana samatyajya sarvan mama bhajeta sacha sattama. Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 11th chapter, verse number 32. Krishna says, the rules of the scriptures come from my direction, my order. But if anyone breaks those rules to satisfy me, he should be considered a better devotee. Sometimes it may be necessary to show even greater loyalty to the king by crossing over the laws of the king. So here, God is above law. When we consider the nature of divinity, we must conclude that Krishna is above law. Law is for us, but law may not be applied in his case. He is absolute. When one has actually come in connection with the absolute, he cannot but ignore the laws meant for ordinary people. Of course, this means in a higher sense. It is not that devotees shall not observe the ordinary laws governing society in the name of devotion. But in the higher sense, we have to understand that Krishna is all in all. He is the creator of law, and he himself sometimes breaks the law, and especially likes those who are ready to break the law for him. They are his favorite, who are ready to take risks for his service, who are ready to bear the consequences of breaking the law. This is the nature of Krishna's entire Vraja-lila. In Vrindavan, all considerations of individual and local interest are sacrificed. In Vrindavan, there is the highest self-sacrifice, to the degree that everyone's own particular interest or consideration is sacrificed into fire. Only when you come to that stage of self-sacrifice you can take birth in Vrindavan, not before. This is the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharmana paritajya māmekam sharanam raja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshashyami ma shucha. Krishna says, you must risk all your prospects. You must risk everything with no prospects other than myself. I cannot tolerate the presence of any second entity in your heart. I cannot tolerate that you will come to me with some consideration. My relation with you must be unconditional. I cannot tolerate any other interest in the heart of my devotee. Only one interest, and that is me. Sacrifice all your so-called interests, all your prospects, everything. Then you can come to meet me in Vrindavan. Jai Śrīla Bhakti Rakṣhak Śrīdhar Dev-Goswāmī Mahārāj ki Jai. So this is the end of chapter number 10, Pure Devotion. And my humble submission to you, distinguished panel, is that right after this, chapter 11 is the subjective Bhagavad Gita, which again he talks about the Chatushloki and goes extremely deep and extracts the Ujjala Rasa from these four and then after that is the Gayatri. So these two are like really heavy chapters. So what I wanted to do was between these just give a little break and go back to chapter 1, because that's the one that we have not covered yet. And if you guys permit, that's Fossilism, Hypnotism, and the Cosmos. So we can read through that, discuss, and then come back to the subjective Bhagavad Gita and then go on to proceed on to the Gayatri towards the conclusion. If you permit, what do you think?
Perfect, Prabhuji.
All right. Okay. So after this, then we'll start with fossilism, hypnotism, and the cosmos. This is chapter 1, and the chapter is an excerpt from a conversation between Srila Śrīdhar Mahārāj and neurophysiologist Dr. Daniel Murphy and physical organic chemist Dr. Tudum Singh. So here Dr. Singh is asking a question. When scientists speak of evolution, they mean that life has evolved from matter. I have heard you speak of evolution with quite a different concept. You say that everything is evolving from consciousness. Srila Śrīdhar Mahārāj. Yes, consciousness comes first and then matter. The basis of all things material is consciousness, which is spiritual. Consciousness can contact consciousness directly. When consciousness comes into the stage of matter, material conception, we experience a kind of vague consciousness. First, there is hazy consciousness, and then material consciousness. But everything has its spiritual side. Yes, Nandakishore Prabhu? Okay. I'm sorry, I thought you were asking something. And as eternal souls, our direct connection is really only with the conscious aspect of existence. Once again, and as eternal souls, our direct connection is really only with the conscious aspect of existence. For example, the earth is conceived of as a woman. According to the Vedas, the presiding deity of the earth is a woman, and the sun is conceived of as a devata, a male god. The soul, coming into material consciousness, must come through some hazy reflection of consciousness, Chidabhas. Only then can the soul experience material consciousness. Before pure consciousness evolves to material consciousness, it will pass through a hazy stage of consciousness or Chidabhas. So in the background of every material thing, there is a spiritual conception. This cannot but be true. Dr. Singh. What is Chidabhas? Srila Śrīdhar Mahārāj. Something like mind. Suppose consciousness comes to feel matter. When consciousness is coming to the material world to know the material world, it has to first pass through material consciousness. And then it can feel what is matter. According to Darwin's theory, matter gradually produces consciousness. But before producing consciousness, it must produce some hazy consciousness, then mind, and then the soul. But in reality, it is just the opposite. So subjective evolution parallels objective or material evolution. But in the evolution of consciousness, the super subject is first. Then the individual soul or jiva subject is next. Then, from the subjective consciousness of the jivas, matter is produced. But consciousness must penetrate hazy consciousness to perceive matter. I say that the process of evolution moves from the top downward. The I'm sorry, what did I do?
You could do.
Is oh, there he is. Namaskar Anilji, good to have you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Welcome, welcome. Back to Param Guru Mahārāj. So, I say that the process of evolution moves from the top downward. The absolute reality, if we at all assert that there is anything which is the absolute reality, must possess two qualifications. What is that? First, in the words of Hegel, he must be by himself. He is his own cause. Second, and more important to us, he is for himself. He exists to fulfill his own purpose. He is not subservient to any other entity, for then his position would be secondary. Reality, the absolute, is full in himself. All other things are coming from him. The perfect substance already exists. What appears to us as imperfect comes down according to our own defective senses. I want to pause here for a minute and bring to the panel's attention the famous verse that we hear and we've discussed it from Sri Brahma Samhita. The Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchid Ananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So I want to highlight just that last part, Sarva Karana Karanam. Essentially what that means is the cause of all causes. So if you ask what has caused him, he is by himself. That's what that means. Reality is by himself, as Param Guru Mahārāj is explaining. So that's what that means. Reality is by himself. And for himself means he is the supreme enjoyer. Bhoktaram Jagyatapasam Sarvalok Maheshwaram. He is the real Bhokta of all Jagya, all sacrifice, all tapasya, all that is offered. Bhoktaram Jagyatapasam Sarvalok Maheshwaram. So he declares that. He says that. He is the ultimate consumer. He's for himself. And he is the ultimate enjoyer. Yes, Arun Prabhu.
I just remind meeting with the Shiv Durga temple, the priest there. So he's doing what he thinks is the service, and it's fine. But then he also accepts this in toto, what he just said. He says, all the offerings are eventually going to him. Yes, yes. So he even people with elementary Shastric knowledge, no matter which panth they are, they understand this fundamental basis for the existence in Bhagavan.
Kamay satay satayar hrit jnana prapadyante na devata. That's what Bhagavad Gita says for people like that. That such people are driven by the desire to enjoy. And because of that desire, their real knowledge has been taken away. So you see, like you said, the gentleman knows, yet look at what he's engaged in. So anyway, we're not to criticize, but just to bring out a point. So back to Param Guru Maharaj. The imperfect must be dependent upon the perfect, the ultimate reality, and the imperfect may be so arranged by him in order to prove his perfection. To prove the perfection of the Absolute, there is conditioned and unconditioned, finite and infinite reality. This defective world, therefore, has an indirect relation to the truth. So there is a relation of this world to the truth. This is not completely false, like some people profess, that there is no rhyme or reason for this entire world to exist. Why? Because it all comes down to zero. No. Param Guru Maharaj is highlighting that there is an indirect connection. Back to Param Guru Maharaj. However, consciousness cannot jump at once into the conception of matter. It must pass through the process to come to material consciousness. From the marginal position, from the verge of the higher eternal potency, evolution and dissolution of this material world begins. This takes place only on the outskirts of Swarupa Shakti. Which is the system responsible for the evolution of the spiritual plane and is an eternally evolving dynamic whole. It is not that non-differentiation is the origin of differentiation. An eternally differentiated substance exists. That plane is filled with Leela, dynamic pastimes. If a static thing can be conceived of as eternal, then why can't a dynamic thing be conceived of as eternal? That plane of Swarupa Shakti is fully evolved within. It is eternal. Evolution and dissolution concern only the degradation of the subtle spirit to the gross material platform and his evolution towards perfection. Let me read that again. Evolution and dissolution concern only the degradation of the subtle spirit to the gross material platform and his evolution toward perfection. So first is degradation to the subtle of the subtle spirit to the gross material, where we say this, the jiva falls into the dark world. So first is this degradation. Why? Because we choose to enjoy separately. We have the second interest that develops, right? The separate interest, right, Anilji?
Yes, sir.
So because of that, then that from that marginal plane, then ichha and dvesh develop. Ichha dvesha samuthena dandamohena bharata. Remember that? That ichha and dvesh, they develop. Samuthena dandamohena bharata. And duality then attracts the individual soul, and they fall into the trap of this energy, the external energy, lower energy. Degradation of the subtle spirit to the gross, so they come to the gross material platform and his evolution towards perfection. But once they're here and one comes through in contact with agents of reality or in any other way, when they come to realize that we need to correct our situation, we need to lose that second interest. Then evolution starts. Then the evolution of consciousness starts. Yes, Arun Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhuji, if you could kindly translate in English Iksha and Dvesh.
Sure. So, Ichha is desire. The second, this desire to enjoy separately, that comes into the individual soul. And Dvesh means, you can say, aversion. So, this Param Guru Maharaj explains this as like an ankur or a sprout. With, when you see a sprout, it has, the first stage has two you can say, leaves, or very small leaves or shoots, however you want to say it. It has that fork. It forks into two. That is the stage of Ichha Dvesh. And it gets attracted naturally, since it has developed these to the duality. And because of that, it falls into the trap of Maya.
So, what, if any, is the relationship when you translate Dvesh into English? Would be envy.
Not envy. I wouldn't say envy. Envy is matsarja.
Yeah.
So the real word for envy in like original Devanagari is matsarja.
Okay.
Dvesh is more of just aversion, like that.
Wanting to choose between two. Okay.
Yeah. So it has desire and then aversion, desire, aversion, desire, aversion. Duality. So the first seed of duality is explained as Ichha Dvesh. This is explained why we, first off, come into this world, dark world. So back to Param Guru Maharaj. Evolution and dissolution concern only the degradation of the subtle spirit to the gross material platform and his evolution toward perfection. Here, there is evolution and dissolution, but these things do not exist in the eternal abode of Swarup Shakti. Dr. Singh, objective evolution is what modern science calls Darwinian evolution. But how does subjective evolution unfold in Krishna conscious science? So, do you notice, just a little pause here, do you notice how these scientists, really highly qualified scientists, they have just in like initial conversation with Param Guru Mahārāj, they accept Krishna consciousness as science. Do you notice that? It's part of the question, but do you notice that the scientist is asking, how does subjective evolution unfold in Krishna conscious science? There we go. So it's all process driven. Okay, Śrīla Śrīdhar, back to Śrīla Śrīdhar Mahārāj. You have to take the example of hypnotism. Through a form of mystic hypnotism, the super subject controls the subject to see a particular thing. And he is bound to see that. One may think that as we see a stone, the stone compels us to see it as stone, but it is just the opposite. We are compelled to see it as stone, being under the influence of the super subject who displays everything as he likes. When he commands, see stone, then we shall see stone. Full control over whatever we see rests in his hands. No power to control what we see rests in the objective world. The objective world is fully controlled by the subjective. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Pashyame yogam aishwaram. Pashyame yogam aishwaryam. If I say, behold my mystic power, you are bound to see it. You have no other choice. So quick little pause here. I just want to say, you remember we are conscious entities and we have free will? This is an exception in the process. Because when the super subject says, Pashyame yogam aishwaryam, at that point in time, Sri Arjuna does not have any free will. That is the complete control of the super subject. When he says, Pashyame yogam aishwaryam, you have to see it. Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Arun Krishna.
Prabhuji, I've gone through a formal hypnotism, and I can so closely try to relate to what Param Guru Mahārāj is saying, and it explains it so beautifully, just because I have been through that process. All I can say is glories to Param Guru Dev.
Jai. Yes, Anilji, you had a point.
Just trying to get my understanding corrected. Sorry if I'm asking a silly question. See,
No.
like this point, right? It's saying Pashyame, that shloka, right? So where the Lord is saying that everything is controlled by me, right? So and then there was a point where we are here because we have a separate interest and that we wanted to have some kind of free will, right? And that is when you when we get that to point of free will, that is where I think all this karma and karma phala and all those things comes up, right? Because of your free will, this is what you did, and all those loops go on, that vicious cycle goes on, right? But now there is one thing which says about this, right? All those free will, you have certain things to choose and all those things, right? But then there is a supersede, right, which says you will see, or I control everything, right? So they are totally opposite, right? I'm getting confused.
No, that's actually that's good, Anilji, that you brought that up, because that confusion is actually going to lead to clarity. Unless there is confusion, there won't be clarity, right? Uh, so I will try to answer that, and then Arun Prabhu, Chinmoy and Chinmoy Prabhu, and anyone else wants to chime in, please do. But so this is how it works. Like when we're, like you're saying, that we're conscious entities, and we have like intrinsically we have free will, because without free will we might as well be stone, right? That's what makes us living. Correct? Without free will, we wouldn't be conscious. Period. So remember, when I said that, here is an exception, what Param Guru Maharaj is saying. Because the Lord does not create our karma or karma phal. He is not associated with that. All that is created by swabhavastu pravartate, by the jiva's swabhav. So neither the karma nor the fruits nor the desire to enjoy the fruits, none of these three things the Lord is associated with. This is all by our own desire that we create. So always remember that. So much so that he says, to the extent that he says, I am not even concerned with your pap and punya. Na datte kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhu. Pap and punya, Yamraj. You're responsible for that. Why? Well, because you wish it upon yourself. That is not his domain. He doesn't like to, or he doesn't associate himself with that. And he says it very clearly. So now comes the point here. The only time we will see that exception where our free will doesn't work is when it intersects with the universal will. If it does. Usually it won't, because that is very rare. But if it does, then we will find out that what I considered my freedom, really there isn't any. It's all him. So it's an exception. It's an exception when he personally is involved in his Leela. And then within the Leela, someone's free will is intersecting with his. Then, in that case, that little micro amount of jiva's free will bear no consequence. Does that make it any clear?
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. And just to add, right, so I think that point of intersection is in that sequence of an event, or maybe in the scale of a time, that will be a point where that jiva will come to a state, that knowledge that, yeah, there is something which is controlling. That is what enlightenment may be, right? Because
enlightenment is in the entirety of subjective evolution. Enlightenment is a process. It's never an event, an isolated event, as people put it. Like one, something happens and the mind expands, and then there is divine light, and then you're enlightened.
Okay.
That's that little thing that people get enamored by is aparokshanubhuti. The start of aparoksh gyan, brahmabhut, that's what that so-called enlightenment is. Right? But in the subjective evolution of consciousness, this is going all the way beyond, all the way to Brajdham, to Vrindavan. Right? So that's why he says the perfect substance already exists. And it is fully differentiated.
Yes.
And then it is coming down. And that stage, that enlightenment that people are, they say becoming one with Brahman, that is just one little stage in the development towards the ultimate goal. It is never denied. It is there. But it is not all in all. Right? That's why Param Guru Maharaj says this. I just want to submit to you. He says, if a static thing can be conceived of as eternal, then why can't a dynamic thing be conceived of as eternal?
That's a very nice line, right?
Yeah, see, these are aphorisms. Guru Maharaj speaks in aphorisms. So when he's saying that, he's telling you that why can't you consider the Leela to be the eternal and the highest? And from that dynamism, everything else flowing down. Just consider it. He's not even saying, agree to it. He's saying, why can't you consider? So although it's perfect, he's still putting it forth to these distinguished people as a hypothesis. It's like, if you don't want to consider this as anything else, consider it as a hypothesis, and then investigate. What's the harm in that? And that's what we say to Vedantists. Right? To people who are stuck with this conception of that enlightenment stage is all in all, mind expansion, and feeling that oneness with Brahman as all in all. Please investigate. Just the mere genesis of Srimad Bhagavatam will give you enough background to go forth in that direction. Why Srila Dev-Goswāmī spoke? Why was he chosen to speak Srimad Bhagavatam? And how did he start by addressing that entire assembly? He started with this declaration, or with this rather not declaration, but with this confession that although I was born on the Nirgun plane, yet that Leela of the Supreme is very attractive to me. And we know if someone is at that plane, at the Nirgun plane, and at the Brahmabhut plane, they would not be attracted to anything material. Right? But yet he gets attracted, he says, Parinishthitopi nirgunya uttam shloka leelaya. Grahita cheta. He says, Grahita cheta. It has captured my very being, my consciousness. Chetana. Akhyanam yadadhitavan. And so therefore I am explaining it to you. Please hear this from me. These are recorded, these are statements by Srila Dev-Goswāmī. These are not any ordinary mortal. So simple investigation would reveal that there is more to it than just that expansion and that aparokshanubhuti. Right? Beyond that is the adhoksaja plane, which descends and reveals itself. So all these things are to be considered when we are talking Krishna conscious science. Then you must study it as a scientific subject, right?
Right.
Someone has some experience and they think that's all in all. That's an opinion. We're not considered in a popular opinion. How many scientists, real scientists, would consider themselves like, okay, this is popular opinion, so therefore I'll go take it. No, they'll like, no, I want to find out the truth. Right?
True, right.
So we consider ourselves not with that populist sentiment, but rather where the truth is. Where does that lead us? People have, so many people have had so many different experiences. Pandit Gopi Krishna, very famous, that Kashmiri Pandit. His books are famous, and so many other experiences. But ultimately, we have to consider, like we have to. What is this? We have to consider where the truth is leading us, our true investigation leading us, scientific investigation. That's why it is said Krishna Anusandhan. Right? We say Krishna Anusandhan. Anusandhan means what? Arun Krishna Prabhu will tell us.
Yeah, it's very
scientific research.
There you go. When we say search for Sri Krishna, reality, the beautiful, it actually comes from Krishna Anusandhan. Okay.
So
yes, please.
This question was very inquisitive, and the way you explained was wonderful. And
Jai Gurudev.
I would like to just put myself in the shoes of, Anil Prabhuji. So what Guru Mahārāj is talking about, okay, this is the hypothesis. Consider this. This is just like in a JVM, Java Virtual Machine. The code may be written functional programming or procedural. Now, many of the people come with a procedural programming world, and they see everything that is running as procedural, right? There's nothing beyond this. This is the only way the Java is running. But all Param Guru Mahārāj is saying is, hey, this is procedural. This is what Darwin is talking about. Consider the possibility of functional programming. Now, okay, yes, it is possible. The same thing can be better explained by machine programming, right? And the second thing is free will. So we, the living entities, are like rogue code running in a JVM. Rogue code running in a JVM. I'm rogue, and I have total free will to go wherever I can, and I think, yes, I am that, I am doing it, and look, if I ping on this file gets corrupted. If I ping on this file gets populated with this, and and this rogue code is also AI code. So I can even create a copy of myself and another rogue code with a little variegatedness. And I think, yeah, this world is great. And you know what? I know everything in this world. I am the Lord. There is nothing beyond this world. But really, this process has got a memory management, this much, space is allocated. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Yeah, your
All
last.
this time I was.
No, not all the time. Just the last part, last half a minute.
Okay. So this rogue code really does not have any freedom the moment sysad comes in and say, JVM, this process freeze and this is only going to get this much. No matter how much I roll around, I may even have a debugger code to say freeze and your state variable vector goes here. You don't have a choice. You had a free will, absolute free will. But when that somebody suddenly appears, it appears from nowhere, right? I thought the world was my JVM. There's nothing beyond it, right? But here, bang. Now, that is the instruction that, instruction to Sri Arjun is. Now you behold my opulence and you don't have a choice. Now you have to behold. So I may, at the same time, see the duality. I may think I have free will. In fact, I could be an absolute rogue code running in a JVM, thinking I have all the free will. But even that free will is running as per the syntax of Java, for example.
Right.
And then, if I'm really a rogue code and I can overcome the Java virtual machine, then I. Okay. So, if
Someone
I.
is controlling you, Prabhu. This is the example.
Java is just holding me there. So I may be a rogue code and I can even break out of the JVM and think, okay, now I am in this environment. This is the complete reality. I can see JVM running here. Gee, I am the Lord, I am the Indra, I am in Brahma, right? But even that could be running under a Docker environment, which is containerized, right? So no matter what I do, and even a Docker could be running on bare metal hardware abstraction layer, still far away from registers. Still, the code thinks I am AI. I think I know everything, but the code cannot know there is register A, register B, register C, accumulators, memory vectors, or what have we. But in a virtual environment, in some Mohan where it has been projected, this piece of code with AI thinks, wow, what a beautiful existence I can enjoy here. I thought this is an example that some of us programmers can relate to.
A very, very good analogy and very good explanation, right? The moment you try to go with that code goes beyond that boundary of JVM, hey, what are you doing? You cannot do it, right? Your free will is done.
You're done.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks for explanation.
And the JVM can still unhold you back. It can still release the illusion back to you. Say, okay, process was paused. Now I allow you to run.
Excellent.
Jai,
thank you. No. Thank you. And then, Chinmay Prabhu, any last words before we try and get the elite Kirtan team in?
I could just say what we I think we consider what the point of having free will is, and that is love. And I think that is the essence of why we are given free will, so we can have a loving exchange with the Lord.
Hare Krishna.
And I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm pretty sure I don't think the Lord wants to interfere with that.
No. Jai,
So,
Sripad Chinmadev Prabhu ki Jai, just for that point. Please,
He's
more.
giving his sanction to everything. The Lord is giving his sanction to everything. So everything is under control, but still he wants as much as we want that loving exchange, and love cannot exist without free will.
Hare Krishna. Beautiful. Thank you for bringing it to that conclusion. I really appreciate that, and I think everyone here on the panel does. And like I said, this is a collaborative effort, and without your participation, I really don't know how this would go on. So this is all you. So if you could keep blessing everyone, including myself, with your presence and association, it will be divine to me. So please give me a second as I. It'll take more than a second, but anyhow, let me try and get the elite Kirtan team ready.
भज श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद
भज श्री कृष्ण
श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद
श्री अद्वैत
हरिहराय नमः कृष्ण यादवाय नमः
हरिहराय नमः कृष्ण यादवाय नमः
यादवाय माधवाय केशवाय नमः
यादवाय माधवाय केशवाय नमः
गोपाल गोविंद राम श्री मधुसूदन
गोपाल गोविंद राम श्री मधुसूदन
गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन
गिरिधारी गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन
श्री चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत चंद्र
चैतन्य नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत चंद्र
गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद
गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद
जय रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ
जय रूप सनातन भक्त
श्री जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास रघुनाथ
श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास रघुनाथ
ইচ্ছায় গোসাই করি চরণ বন্দন যাহা হইতে বিঘ্ন নাশ আবিষ্ট পুরাণ ইচ্ছায় গোসাই যার মুই তার দাস তসবার পদ রেণু মোর পঞ্চগ্রাস चरण से विभक्त सने बास जनमे जनमे मोर एई अभिलाष इच्छाए गोसाई जबे ब्रज कोइला बास श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण नित्य लीला कोरिला प्रकाश आनंद बोलो हरि भजा वृंदावन श्री गुरु वैष्णव पदे मजैया मान श्री गुरु वैष्णव पद पद्मा कोरियास हरि नाम संकीर्तन को है नरोत्तम दास हरि हराय नमः कृष्ण यादवाय नमः यादवाय माधवाय केशवाय नमः हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव जय गौरंगा सुंदर जय गौरंगा सुंदर जय गौरंगा सुंदर जय गौरंगा सुंदर
Joy. Okay, Jai Dhoni. Anika ji, please take it away.
Jai Sapika Shishiguru Ganga Gandavar Govinda Sundar Giridhar Gopilaju Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Om Vishwatman Shapur Chashara Varsta Shri Srimad Bhakti Sundar Dev-Goswāmī Mahārāj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Om Vishwatman Shapur Chashara Varsta Shri Srimad Bhakti Dasakshara Dev-Goswāmī Mahārāj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Om Vishwatman Shapur Chashara Varsta Shri Srimad Bhakti Sinata Sarvasya Chakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Om Vishpat Chalai Gaur Kishore Das Babji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishpat Rakṣhak Chhirananda Bhakti Vinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishpat Chalai Jagannath Das Babji Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Rupanu Guru Guru Ki Jai.
Jai.
Namaskar Sri Mahārāj Das Thakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Baladev Siddhi Bhushan Ki Jai.
Jai.
Śrīla Vishwanath Kartik Prabhu Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Nortama Shamamanda Shri Vaishnav Char Prabhu Ki Jai.
Jai.
Ravinder Vandas Thakur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri Krishna Kaviraj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Saprasada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai.
Jai.
Saprasada Shri Mahaprabhu Ki Jai.
Jai.
Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopa Gopinath Ramakunda Radhakunda Giridhar Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Lakshmi Vardeva Ki Jai.
Jai.
Shri the Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Shri Narasimha Deva Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Koti Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai.
Yogi Jamna Ji Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vanta Rajashun Bhagavatam Chaitanya Sarmasa Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vishwa Vaishnava Raja Sabha Ki Jai.
Jai.
Across Math Sri Chaitanya Math Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sadhya Saka Math Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math Ki Jai.
Jai.
Vishwa Pabhyata Saka Math Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Ramaipur Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Ramnabadeep Ki Jai.
Jai.
Nirvan Purushottam Dham Ki Jai.
Jai.
Baladeva Subhadra Jamna Ji Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Govind Sita Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Shri Shiva Gangaraju Ki Jai.
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 Krishna Vaishnava Mando Ki Jai.
Jai.
Amrita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Sri Ram Tulsidan
Jai.
Ki Jai Gopnam Nande.
Hari Hari Bol. Anika ji, Preeti ji, and Bikram ji ki jai. Sripad Arun Krishna Prabhu ki jai. Sripad Chinmay Dev Prabhu ki jai. Anil ji and family ki jai. Sangeeta ji ki jai. And all the devotees and everyone assembled ki jai.
Sripad Jairam Prabhu Ki Jai, Abhayat Ki Jai, और ललित कीर्तन ग्रुप की जय।
जय श्रील भक्ति पावन जनार्दन महाराज की जय, श्रील भक्ति निर्मल आचार्य महाराज की जय, श्री चैतन्य सारस्वत मठ आचार्य वृंद की जय, श्री चैतन्य सारस्वत मठ सन्यासी वृंद की जय, विश्ववरेण्य श्रील एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, नित्याय गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि बोल. So I have stopped streaming and